Is America's military leadership getting caught up in internal social policies when it should be focused on national defense? And, well, what happens when a new administration comes in promising to put the warfighting mission above all else?
Yeah, we're diving into what looks like a really monumental transition happening right now at the Pentagon.
Seems explosive based on our sources.
Really is.
Yeah.
It's driven by President-elect Trump nominating Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary.
Right.
So we're looking at a whole stack of articles really detailing this conservative mandate to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI initiatives.
Right.
And the idea is to pivot the entire focus of the armed forces onto these really urgent global security challenges. You know,
Yeah.
the South China Sea, the war in Ukraine, that kind of thing.
Okay, so our mission today, let's lay it out for you. We want to distill this core conflict. It's basically a collision course, isn't it?
Hmm.
Between the push to purge what they're calling woke policies from the military versus the critical need for absolute focus on combat readiness in what feels like a pretty dangerous world right now.
Increasingly dangerous, yeah.
All right, let's unpack this internal fight first, the ideology part. President-elect Trump picking Pete Hegseth. I mean, he's a former Fox News host, Army National Guard major, combat veteran. This suggests the change isn't just window dressing.
No, definitely not. It signals something systemic. And the mandate Hegseth has received, it seems remarkably clear. He's publicly embraced it too.
What exactly has he said?
Well, he's vowed to completely reshape the military's culture, stating very explicitly that Trump wants a warfighter who will, and this is the quote, clean out the woke crap.
Wow, okay, so pretty direct language.
Very direct. This isn't just, trimming some program budgets. It's a top-down directive.
Yeah.
The goal is realigning the fundamental purpose of the military purely towards combat readiness.
And we're already seeing sort of the pressure points emerging.
Absolutely. We've got source material talking about a real chilling effect from this list put out by the American Accountability Foundation, the AAF.
The AAF list.
Yeah, this group basically urged Hegseth to immediately dismiss 20 general officers or senior admirals.
20. Why them specifically?
Well, the AAF is basically using public pressure, right? They're targeting senior personnel who they claim are, and again, their words, pretty egregious advocates for DEI policies.
How are they defining that, being an advocate?
It seems to vary. Sometimes it's based on public statements, even things like retweeting content that promotes diversity programs. The Foundation's argument is basically that the military just can't afford distractions or demoralization from what they call leftist ideology, not when major threats are looming.
If you're an officer right now, especially senior one, that must put you in a really tough spot.
You'd think so. I mean, when senior leaders start getting targeted based on perceived political alignment or policy alignment rather than just their competence, that creates a serious dynamic. Defense officials we've looked at, their comments suggest this chilling effect is real. It could drive people out, they say. And it might cause service members to focus more on, personal career survival.
Like scrubbing their social media, watching what they say.
Exactly. Instead of focusing entirely on the mission, which is, ironically, the stated goal of the whole shift.
That risk to morale, to retention, that seems like a key tension here.
It absolutely is. But it's also important to give the context for those diversity efforts the previous administration was focused on.
Okay.
I mean, current military officials, they were actively working to fix something pretty well documented. The fact that military leadership is historically less diverse than the enlisted forces they command.
Right. I remember seeing stats on the...
Yeah, like only about 17% of the entire military is female. And that disparity gets even wider when you look at the flag ranks, the generals and admirals.
And it's not like everyone agrees these diversity efforts automatically undermine the mission, right? There was that court ruling recently.
That's a really important point. Yeah, a federal judge just ruled the Naval Academy can actually continue using race in its admissions process.
Even after the Supreme Court ruling against civilian universities.
Exactly. The judge cited the military's, quote, potentially distinct interests. It basically acknowledged a unique national security interest in having a diverse officer corps, one that maybe better reflects the nation it serves. That ruling kind of pushes back directly on the broader trend.
So it highlights the complexity. You've got this idea that a diverse command structure is maybe a strategic plus.
Right. On one side. But on the other, the incoming administration is very clearly prioritizing what it sees as a uncompromising meritocratic military strength. The argument being that these internal policy debates are simply a distraction from the main job, the existential job.
Okay, let's shift focus then. Let's talk about those external threats that this whole leadership shift is supposedly meant to address. This is where the rubber meets the road for the warfighting focus, right?
This is the core mission argument. Yeah. Hegseth's supporters, they argue the military has to refocus urgently on external adversaries, specifically naming Iran, Russia, and especially China.
Let's look at the Pacific first. That seems like an immediate hotspot.
It demands constant, unwavering attention. China claims virtually the entire South China Sea. And they've built up these robust military bases on 3 key artificial reefs: Fiery Cross, Mischief, and Subi.
These aren't just lines on a map.
Oh, no. They're forward operating bases. They're designed to project power throughout the region.
And we saw a pretty high-stakes example of that tension recently, didn't we, with the USS Preble?
We did. The Preble sailed within 12 nautical miles of Swallow Reef, which is in the Spratly Islands. Now, the stated goal, the official reason, was to conduct a freedom of navigation operation, basically, to normalize adherence to international maritime law.
Which China disputes.
Which China absolutely disputes. So that's a risky move. Calculated, yes, but risky. And it connects directly back to the kind of capability and, frankly, the kind of nerve the new leadership insists on building. That sort of action requires military leaders focused entirely on execution, not distracted by internal policy debates. That's the argument.
And the pressure on Taiwan isn't letting up either.
No, it's intensifying. We saw right after Taiwan's president visited some Pacific allies, China launched this really aggressive, coordinated show of force.
What did that involve?
Well, in just one 24-hour period, Taiwan reported tracking 14 Chinese warships and 4 balloons near the island. 14 warships.
And balloons, too. That sounds familiar.
It does, and it's hard to ignore the detail that one of those balloons apparently brushed right over the northern tip of Taiwan itself. That feels like calculated intimidation. It demands an immediate, decisive military posture in response.
So when we talk about capability, we're also talking about the hardware, the technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Advanced weapon systems are key. The U.S. is pouring money into next-gen stuff, like the Helios laser system.
What does Helios do?
It's designed for high-power defense really fast, against threats like drones, small boats, things like that. So when the new administration talks about focusing on sheer capability, they mean prioritizing the rapid deployment and the effectiveness of tech like Helios, perhaps over other considerations.
Okay, so these pressures, China, Taiwan, the need for advanced tech, they underscore the argument for a Pentagon solely focused on warfighting.
That's the connection they're making. And this shift, this philosophy, it also extends to how the administration plans to handle existing conflicts and alliances, like Ukraine.
Right, Ukraine. Let's talk about the sheer scale of the U.S. commitment there.
It's huge. Since the invasion back in February 2022, the U.S. has provided over $62 billion in military aid alone to Ukraine.
$62 billion.
Yeah. And we know the Biden administration was rushing to spend the remaining nearly $8 billion in already authorized funding before the transition happened in January. That whole massive financial pipeline is now fundamentally under review.
That signals a pretty major change in foreign policy philosophy.
It really does. President-elect Trump has been very clear, calling for an immediate ceasefire to end the war. His argument is that, quote, too many lives are being needlessly wasted.
So the implication is less U.S. involvement, less money.
A drastic reduction, it seems, in U.S. financial and military exposure going forward. The priority seems to be shifting towards American resources being kept at home.
And this idea, this philosophy of reducing costly overseas commitments,
Yeah.
doesn't stop with Ukraine, does it? It brings up fundamental questions about alliances we've had for decades, like NATO.
Exactly. The viability of NATO is back on the table, at least rhetorically.
What's the core criticism there?
It centers on burden sharing. Trump has warned repeatedly that he's open to pulling the U.S. out of NATO entirely. The claim is that European allies are, quote, freeloading on U.S. military spending.
Is there any basis for that? What are the numbers?
Well, what many sources clarify is that this stems from the voluntary commitment NATO members made years ago to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. It's voluntary, but it's a long-standing target.
And most aren't hitting it.
Only a fraction of NATO allies currently meet that 2% benchmark. So for the incoming administration, this looks like an unacceptable drain on American resources. The argument is, if allies don't meet their own spending targets, why should American taxpayers carry the overwhelming burden?
So the policy goal seems pretty clear then.
Yeah. Prioritize American security, minimize these costly entanglements, unless there's a direct, clear benefit to the U.S.
Okay, so we're seeing the whole picture emerge. You've
Yeah.
got this internal ideological battle aimed at purging perceived distractions.
Right, the DEI focus,
Yeah.
the work policies.
And then you have this external policy overhaul designed to kind of pull back from global commitments, reduce exposure, and demand more from allies.
Exactly. Fiscal parity from allies, reduced global footprint.
So let's bring it back. What does this all mean for you, the listener, the citizen, the taxpayer? We're watching a conservative administration trying to actively purge policies it views as social advocacy from the Pentagon.
While at the same time preparing to fundamentally change how the U.S. interacts with global conflicts and alliances like NATO, it's a two-front shift.
And it directly impacts how that enormous defense budget, what is it, $877 billion, gets spent.
A massive amount of money. And the core tension is really about priorities. Is the number one priority internal restructuring, ensuring a certain kind of cultural alignment within the military? Or is it immediate, uncompromised deterrence against external threats, powers like China and Russia?
The new leadership is clearly betting on the latter.
They're banking that by prioritizing this single warfighter focus and eliminating what they see as internal political distractions. The entire military force, from how they recruit, right up to deploying advanced weapons like Helios, will just become more competent, more capable.
Which leaves us with a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it? When we talk about the foundational strength of the U.S. military, its ability to deploy advanced weapons, to command effectively, to dominate conflicts if necessary, is that capability ultimately dependent on the political alignment of its officers? Or is it only about their unwavering expertise on the mission itself?
That really is the core question. And it's the real test, I think, of this entire new mandate we're seeing unfold.